By their vote.
The agenda, in case
I have some.
I didn't see it. Let's just here somewhere. There it is.
Sign it.
No, I didn't sign it. It's supposed to be a few more minutes late. Okay, so we have a section for public comment. We have an Eagle Scout presentation. We're going to review the year-end audit. We have first review of the fiscal year 16 budget. If we get that far through the night, we might let Joanne leave early. And then we'll go and review the board merger statement, talk about preschool program, the CESU committee reports, consent agenda items, which were already sent out in minutes of the previous meeting. We're looking at the warrants now, and also the next meeting date and agenda, and any other business. Everyone okay with the agenda as stated there? Okay. So, any public comment? See public, so we'll move on to step number 2. Eagle Scout presentation. It looks like we might have somebody here presenting Eagle Scout project.
So before this starts, we have this slideshow, and I have copies of the slideshow.
All right. Can you just introduce yourself?
I am Christian DeCoster. I'm currently a Life Scout with Troop 627, the Jericho Underhill troop that meets over at Browns River. Currently, I'm proposing a project, or my Eagle Scout project, which is a shaded lean-to structure out in front of the school. There's a marked space out front where the project will,
We can share.
or the proposed
Yeah, we can
location
share.
of
Thank
the
you, Christian.
project. And so just a little bit about the project and the slideshow. So the main idea is it's a shaded lean-to structure to be placed in the same spot where the dying tree was in front of the ID school. There's now the stump there. The tree has been removed. The structure is 12 by 8 feet, large enough for 2 benches, which will be included as part of this project. The size of the benches hasn't been completely figured out now. It will depend sort of on the fund or the amount of funds raised, but the amount included in my proposal is enough to carry about a couple adults each. It's going to look similar to this. A few changes about this. This is just a stock photo. I don't have any pictures of the project yet. It's going to be a little bit smaller than that, as it's only a 2 beam structure instead of the 3 that you see here. And instead of doing a stone floor, it's going to be wood chips, sort of like the play area that's out back, with a landscaping fabric underneath. So the structure it's lean-to, 4 adults each. That was kind of the goal. We're going to see if we can do that for the amount for each bench. It was brought to my attention last meeting that the benches will also be secured to the structure in some way, likely either some sort of chain of some sort, or just having them secured to the baseboard to keep them from being stolen. So why it's a shade, or it's a place for shade for both the parents to wait for their kids and the kids while they're waiting for the bus. Also, any events that may happen outdoors can take place under there also. On a personal level, I chose this project because I went to school here, and I believe in giving back to places that helped me. So this is kind of my way of doing that, I guess you could say. So the execution of the project is going to be divided into 2 weekend-long periods. The first weekend-long period is building the benches off-site, which will be at my house, and digging the post holes, filling them with concrete. That's going to be the first weekend. Between then, we're going to have to secure off that small area with stakes and caution tape, and teachers will just have to be advised to keep the students away from that. The second will be installation of the project. Once that's done, it'll be fully able to be used by all of the classes and teachers. And the fundraising, this is a little behind I have presented this to the PTA. The PTA has donated amount of money to help with it. The fundraiser that we're going to mainly use for this is a fundraiser dinner. We're hoping to use St. Thomas as our location for that. It's going to be put on by the Scouts, and all we ask for that is just if the PTA or does the PTA run the school newsletter, or
The school has.
school runs the school newsletter, just to have it as advertised in there and possibly send out emails so the parents are aware of it.
Absolutely.
What is the date on that? Do you know yet?
We don't have a date yet. We're thinking November. It's going to take place after the project. The proposed weekends are not next weekend, but the weekend after that for the first bit, and then following that would be most of the construction. And that's what I have for this slideshow. Now, open to any questions or comments about the project.
Just so we understand what we're trying to achieve here, what is it you're asking of the board?
I'm just presenting it to the board, hoping to get, the board's approval for the project. I've already asked the PTA for fundraising, so that isn't the question.
So it sounds like, this is your formal request to do this project.
That's the form.
It may or may not be something that we would require, but I think it's a good idea to run it by the school board and get feedback on it if there is any. So
Whenever you're changing the facade or the landscape, definitely want to get board approval.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I asked Christian to come tonight. Two other things that we did look into, would there need to be a permit? And I checked with the zoning officer for Jericho, and no permit is needed. This structure fits within the zoning guidelines, so no permission is needed. And the other thing that we thought about is we will check with DigSafe to make sure that there's no underground lines disturbed when we build it, when the Scouts build it.
Nice looking structure.
Thanks.
It's like a pole barn design.
Yes. The roof is also going to be a little bit nicer than that. It is a tin roof, but we're going to put wood
Oh, nice.
beams underneath it for support and aesthetics.
Nice.
Any other comments?
What is your projected budget?
The projected budget, just for the materials for the project, is about $700.
Okay,
A lot of that's been raised for everything logistically, including supplies, food for everyone is going to be working there because it is going to be a full day for 4 days. We're looking at around $900.
okay. So for the building, 700, for everything else, another 200. Okay.
And how much did you raise so far?
So far, about half of the cost has been raised through donations.
About 450?
About, yes. Any other questions or comments?
So how much are you looking from the PTA? Have you had?
The PTA has donated $200 for
Okay,
the project.
great.
how long do you think the structure will last?
I don't know in terms of how long. It's a good structure, or it's a very good design. We're working with some of the adults in the troop, working carpenter, building, and construction. One of the things that we're doing is we're going to put in sonotubes filled with concrete, and it's going to be bracketed into that instead of just put into the ground. It should help it through the winter, and the slope of the roof is, and just the roof in general, is being made so that snow is going to fall off it easily and not build up or turn to ice on it.
Are you going to have any plaques or markings or signage on it?
The troop generally adds a plaque that just says the name of the person in the troop who's built it, built by Troop 627 as an Eagle project on it. Other than that, no plaques on it.
What is the roof? Excuse me. What is the roof material?
It's a tin roof.
Oh, so it's a raised seam.
Yes.
Okay. Well, that's nice. What color is it going to be? Do you know?
We actually haven't looked into the color of the roof yet.
Should probably be the same as the roof of the,
Yeah, well, that's what I was thinking. Do we have a preference? Should match the building, right?
Yes, it will also match the slope of the building. Just to
Okay.
fit in.
So the roof is black, right?
Right, the dark shingles.
There.
Right. Yeah, it can match that, I believe.
it will last longer than this board.
Use boards longer than, better than this. How will just thinking about the ability to relocate the structure if we decide to change, parking lot or the entrance. Will you, you can either set those posts into the concrete, or you said you might bracket them.
They're going to be bracketed in, using a Simpson bracket. It's just going to be fitted on top of the
Yep.
concrete. And moving it would be just essentially removing it from the brackets. It would have to have a new
Break-
structure,
yeah,
underneath
right.
the new concrete
Just break
structure
out the
and
brackets, leave them buried and build new ones.
But in answer to your question, we anticipated from our previous discussion about the driveway project. So we have it offset so that you still can straighten that sidewalk that we talked about and would not interfere with the structure. So it won't be exactly where that stump is, but offset a little bit and you can see the stakes out there.
Yeah, my understanding is that the plan is not final yet,
That's right.
so this will be put in and we just,
Have to work
Yeah.
around it.
that's right.
It'll be way before that project is done.
And so how did you come to realize this particular idea?
This particular idea came from my troop has done for a while different structures. One of the first ones was a couple of years ago. Matt Sem built a gazebo by Mills River. You can see that. We scaled back from gazebos because, as we've learned from that, gazebos are very difficult to build. So there's also the one at Browns River, which was 2 Eagle projects. And I had heard through one of my the troops, I think it was Mr. Johnson, if you know him, he used to be the Scoutmaster, had a lot of Eagle Scout projects, told me that the school was planning on chopping down the tree and that they were looking for some structure of some sort to replace it. And after some different ideas as to what the structure would be, we settled on this lean-to structure, which will also, it'll keep the rain off the kids while they're waiting for the bus and provide shade in the summer.
Great idea.
But yes,
I can't get myself to be able to share via this recording. I can just watch myself. But I was wondering if I'm thinking about an outdoor classroom, and I just want me to have the ability to have a teacher in a class outside, out of the rain, in a way that was reliable. Like, that would be very cool to have something that was big enough to have in a class so that you could say do a science class or do an outdoor lesson and not have to worry about weather as much. I don't know. I don't want it to be a monkey wrench, but that's sort of something I'm hoping that we can dream about having as a little kid. I don't know if we could collaborate in an origin class or arrange it so that there's a little more seating, maybe like in a U-shape, and just maybe it's too much and too late to change any elements because what we have here already is great, but it would be really cool in some way to have a classroom. I don't know if there's something I can combine.
Right, so your question is the space large enough to be an outdoor classroom? Could it be adapted to be an outdoor classroom? That is one of our thoughts around it, that it's a central place, you could call out to your group, let's gather at the gazebo and I'm going to share these different things with you. By looking at the structure, I would think that if the school, wanted to afterwards add additional seating around it, it would be very flexible that way. And when you have kids, if they're gathering close up to listen to some instruction, it might be large enough. I don't know, Christian, if there's a ability budget-wise and plan-wise to increase the dimensions of it. That's sort of what Jessica was asking.
I'm not sure at this point with the planning if it is possible to increase the size by much, but it would there is the potential to add more seating around it, not necessarily under it though. It is a structure that would definitely be open to additions if possible.
And I think the overall size of it, considering, when teachers gather their students on the carpet in front of them, you really could, for almost all of our classes, gather students and have an adult. It might be, the moms and dads might have to stand out and get drizzled on, but the kids could be under and dry.
The benches have backs on them?
They will, yes.
So there's, okay, so they'll be facing
I think
to the road?
I haven't actually looked at the layout yet of the benches, but I think that it'll be possible to have one facing or them kind of facing inwards towards each other, I guess you could say.
And are benches pressure treated wood or?
The type of wood we haven't found out. Pressure treated is one of the options for it. Probably not for the benches though. It is possible though.
But in talking with Joe O'Brien and John Godak, as Christian was talking about materials, the new type of pressure treated that you can buy is safe and approved, whereas the old kind that we used maybe 10 years ago, you had to rip out because it was unsafe. John Godak and I, when we put out the stakes, we oriented it so that people sitting there, it would somewhat be pointed towards Browns River so that people who were waiting for their children could see the school and the children playing, that they weren't like facing the driveway, but they were more facing toward the school so they could see both. And plus, that's just, you have a rectangle, you could really face whatever way you want.
Okay.
Will the benches be fixed or will they be movable?
That's one of the things that we're looking at right now. One of the concerns is that the benches might get stolen, so how they're going to be held in place, I'm not entirely sure on that. It's going to be surrounded by kind of a baseboard, so they could be bolted to that, or just held in place with some sort of, I can't think of the word right now, but not necessarily a chain, but held in place.
Cable.
Yeah.
All right, anything else? So I'll entertain a motion to approve the Lean-To Eagle Scout project as presented.
So moved.
Is there a second? Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thumbs have it. Great.
Great.
Pass this one.
Christian.
Check
Tommy,
this one off.
nice job.
Very nice presentation.
Yes, you did.
Thank you.
Good work on
Put
this.
the word out in the.
Do we need like an electronic copy of this or anything, or do you got the essence in the minutes?
Can you send me
Yes.
that?
Christian and I have already sent it to someone, so I have a digital
Oh,
copy
okay,
of it,
great.
so I can send it.
Here you go.
Thank you.
You can use those again.
Thank you.
if you need to.
Yeah.
In case you need to go
Does
the other
anyone
way.
want to keep a copy of it?
Could I? You want to
Yeah,
keep one? Oh, I have one. I'll just,
You have one?
Yep.
There's 6 other boards if you want to review them. Follow this guy around.
Okay.
You got a bunch of them.
yeah, wow, free coffee. Yes,
I'll meet you right after all.
All right, item number 3, review year-end audit.
so this is some good news.
There should be enough to pass around.
Are we flush with cash?
I wouldn't say that.
Not great news, but.
That's good.
Not in the red, let's put it
Wow,
that
we
way.
don't have a deficit.
The red isn't as red.
Yes, that's very good news.
We're black.
Yep.
So I'll just walk through this very quickly, and if you have questions, stop me along the way. So we began fiscal year 14 with a deficit of $59,686. The actual revenues and expenditures during fiscal year 14 netted a surplus of $10,492. The revenues that are represented here do include the collection of the delinquent taxes, all penalties and interest. So that means that your fiscal year ending fund balance is a deficit of $49,194. We budgeted for fiscal year 15 that we would have a deficit, an anticipated deficit of $79,799. Because we budgeted that, we are actually now going to be able to budget a surplus in fiscal year 16 of $30,605, assuming that there are no extreme costs that occur during fiscal year 15 budget. Questions?
Good news.
Very good news.
The 79,799, that was the number in our budget presentation, right?
Correct. That's what we estimated that the deficit was going to be at the end of fiscal year 14. So we've collected taxes
Oh.
to meet that
Right.
estimated deficit.
It's less than you anticipated plus the revenue.
Right. So because we're collecting taxes on 79,799, but the actual is 49,194, you're going to have a surplus of $30,605 to carry forward into fiscal year 16 budget.
Okay,
So that means that the education spending revenue will be reduced by that amount.
so the 80,000 plus the 30,000 would be the swing, right, in that line item from one year to another.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
yes,
Where $110,000
yes.
pre-K is funded,
Questions on that?
same number, isn't it? No, so that's good. In terms of the delinquent taxes, do you have a sense, I know you're not the tax collector, but are we in are there any major delinquent taxes left to collect? Or was this a big move? Do you have any visibility on that?
I think this was a big move. There might be some dangling, but the heavy lifting has been done. That's my understanding from David Sunshine, the attorney.
So is this a final audit?
It's not final in that the auditors have not provided us a written draft to proofread, but the audit was completed in the first full week of September.
Okay.
So we are waiting just to get the draft to proofread and make sure all the numbers match, and not expecting any big surprises from that audit report.
So this number in the next budget would be 30, positive 30.
Yeah, and we'll be looking at that when we go over draft.
Okay. Good on that one? Yep, that's great.
Draft one of the budget. You want to pass it down?
So could I just open there are a lot of rough numbers in here, very rough. And so this is just to give you an idea of what the budget would look like with a couple of variables. Number one, really the instructional programs staying the way they are now. Adding some money in for technology and preschool, as well as some of the influence on the deficit and adding in money. And Joanne will go over all this, but to set the frame, money that you had taken out of buildings and operations last year, put back in. Would you like to highlight the big parts, or do you want Joanne to walk through it?
Could you briefly touch on the assumptions, in general, like what did we assume for merit increases, for any other?
3%
Dials are.
for salaries. That's the placeholder.
Mhm.
And 4.5% for insurance. We also, the assessments at Chittenden East are at, again, assumptions at 5%. That's what we set them at. So central office, transportation, shared staffing, some of that we've set at 5% right now.
And where does pre-K show up?
Under the instructional programs, if you turn to the pages the first one is not numbered, so at the bottom of the actual numbered page 2. So I apologize for that.
Page 0.
Yeah, page 0, then page 2. So again, at the bottom of this section, you're going to see preschool partnerships, where we're estimating the potential of 37 partnerships at $3,000 apiece. So right now, we're budgeting $111,000 for the preschool partnerships.
Now, those are rough numbers because UID is working on the census right now. What we did to give us an idea for what we thought might be a reasonable calculation was to look at the students in K and in 1 currently and apply that number. But we'll have a better idea in November about what the actual cost is gonna be, because we're gathering that census data right now.
So 37 is kindergarten plus first grade this
Yeah.
year.
Just 3 and 4-year-olds.
It's like.
Yep.
card.
And there could potentially be some 5-year-olds.
Yeah, because
We could, but well. Did you want me to just go through and highlight other things for you that John didn't address with the assumptions that we're using right now?
I think so. That'd be.
Okay, so on the next page, number 3, as John mentioned, I'm adding back in the computer hardware that was removed for fiscal year 15 budget. There was a proposal placed last year in which you were trying to reach a goal of 2-to-1 student to computer ratio. And to achieve that, you would have to add $14,180 to your budget to bring that level of computers up. And it was removed in fiscal year 15 with a notation to bring it back in fiscal year 16. So that's why that number has been reintroduced.
That's on page 3, right?
Yep, that's what I'm,
And where is it?
down at the very bottom under computer hardware.
Second one.
Ed Media Services.
page 3.
Page 2, sorry.
No, the physical, page 3.
Got it.
Okay,
Okay, so on 3, we're moving the nurse from local to assessed and increasing it.
because the nurse position is now shared, this position is now eligible for benefits. So,
She's working at Smiley as well.
It's shared, so she gets enough time that she qualifies for benefits.
correct. More questions on this page?
Nope.
There aren't any surprises on physical page 4. Basically here, all the assumptions are applied. The assessments are listing at 5%, and a lot of level funding on the Board of Education lines. All the salaries and benefits are per contract, so there's no real changes there. Big changes. Questions on that page? On physical page 5, underneath operation and maintenance of plant, the last two lines, building and equipment, they were zeroed in fiscal year 15, and the funds to make the repairs necessary to the building came out of your repair and replacement fund. So I level funded these two lines to fiscal year 14. All the other lines are level funded at this time. Rubbish removal, you'll see what seems to be or appears to be a large increase. Their rates have gone up. This is under contract. We do go out to bid, and this was the cheapest bid that we received. But the cost increased. Under food services, there's a new line there. It's labeled transfer to food service. It's the last line. The program did end up in a deficit situation in fiscal year 14, and that deficit does have to be cleared. So that will be a transfer from the general fund to the food service to bring the program to zero status, starting from zero. And then on page 6, the other support services are your treasurer, the contingency, and then your debt service for your debt schedule. So draft 1, very, very rough estimate, is currently at a 12.21% increase, $214,637.
After that is preschool.
On page 5, the building and equipment, we also have a line in here for repair and maintenance, which is 11,000. Can you remind me how those three funds are used differently? My understanding from the discussion 6 months ago was the building and equipment lines were really capital in nature and were used for buying new assets, and that's why we chose to draw from the reserve fund and take them out. So putting them back in there, unless we knew how that would be spent, may not be necessary.
That's correct. Now, we're at the November meeting, and David and I talked about this earlier. We'll come back with some capital needs that are prioritized,
That'll show up.
and it'll show up there. We put it back in because we had taken it out. That doesn't mean that it's going to remain in. But that's typically the way. Repair and maintenance is really regular maintenance that has to be done annually, and the buildings and the equipment are things that are above and beyond that, like could be replacing doors or windows or the boiler.
Exactly.
So we'll
things
review the
like that.
capital plan, and whatever we decide in that, we'll decide if we fund it through the budget or fund it through big sale.
That's right.
Maybe the PTA will give us $200.
And Joe and David have done a lot of work on the
Scout
capital
plans.
plans. Yeah,
We could-
they look handy to me.
Looks like they can raise more money than we can.
Do you guys do boilers? Put a plaque on it?
Will work for plaque.
So we'll have a really detailed list of the capital issues with the building for the next meeting.
All right. So it looks like, no surprises to me, food service, we actually have to pay the piper on, so to speak. We're going to decide what we're going to do for capital projects. We've got the preschool, large pill to swallow. A decision around how many more Chromebooks we invest in. An uncontrolled change there with the nurse eligibility for benefits.
And those
The teacher
benefits
contract.
are being shared with Smiley?
Yes,
Mhm.
yes.
What's the tax rate?
We're not even gonna try.
It's only 5.
That would be like, that's
That's why
not
I was
even an
looking
attempt.
good. Where's the next
funny.
page?
Only got the first half.
Let me show you where that pretty surplus number appears, though. On the very first page, the non-number page on the
Yeah.
bottom half, you'll see the first line is your surplus deficit beginning balance. So you will see that you're showing a $30,605 surplus, or, as you said, $110,000 shift in that line.
Not all
Which
of
is
that
a
would be
positive.
applied with the to the tax rate though.
Right.
Only the 30,000 will be.
I don't think so, because
Is
this
the
is a
line below?
negative number.
The line below it is positive.
I'll check it again, but I don't think so, because it's being compared to a negative number.
That's like going on a number line from negative to
Positive.
positive. So it's
In
a big
comparison
swing.
to the negative number. So,
Okay, then we have
Oh.
one online viewer, and she's sitting behind you if she has a question.
where does the number 37 come from with preschool age? Are these 3 and 4-year-olds who are headed our way? This,
Let me see.
How do you get 37 preschoolers?
Oh, we took, this is a very, very rough number. We took, because they're working on the census right now to see how many 3 and 4-year-olds and potentially some 5-year-olds will qualify. And we took K and 1 and used that as the placeholder. That makes sense?
If there's any way with our account structure process to highlight the pre-K on the summary page, I think that would be helpful for people to understand, because it's a brand new
Yeah, yeah.
you
instructional
want it
program.
separated out?
And I know we're probably trying to have a common set of accounts for all the districts, maybe, but
Here we are. But we can highlight it and so that people can clearly delineate it from the other parts of the budget. I think that I agree that that is important.
Yeah, it is its own line within the detail, but you want it on the summary page as well.
yeah, and then show
Okay.
the separate revenue for that down
Can't.
below.
At this time.
Big sale.
Yeah, that we can't do.
We haven't
State's
been
gonna have to
given
do
that
some serious
information.
Maybe if we put a placeholder in.
What is the state funding likely to be for pre-K?
The way it is right now, it's gonna have to come through the property taxes. They're gonna have to, I believe, in all the information, all the meetings I've been to, it's gonna have to come through the school districts. So it's gonna really mean increasing your budget and increasing the statewide tax rate, because what happens is it's universal now. So what they pay for in Canaan, we're going to be paying for, you'll pay for in Underhill and vice versa. So it'll affect everybody throughout the state because we're all adding this one program. You'll be able to count the students as in your enrollment, so it'll mitigate some of the volatility in the tax rate, but it's still going to go up. They're either going to get it through the local tax rate or the statewide tax rate. There's a rumor going around that I had a couple people ask me about it, that there is some race to the top money that the state is trying to get to help expand preschool, but it has some really distinct requirements, and it's more for expanding preschool beyond those 10 hours a week to a full day program for kids that are at risk or economically disadvantaged.
With the $3,000 plug per student and the 0.47, or what do we count them as? How many?
At 0.46.
0.46.
So Jessica, oh, I'm sorry.
Yes,
Jessica had a question. Just to be clear, we're not starting a preschool here. Our students will be able to choose a qualifying school. Does that include other public preschools and CESUs such as UCS or down south, even though they are not in that district?
Yeah, it's apparent. I have a summary I prepared, but I can answer this. Underhill it's a triple E program right now, so there might be some slots available there. So the answer to that could be yes. And if there are qualified programs, school-based programs in Chittenden East, yes. Then students could go there as well.
The per pupil spending, though, will be down as a result of putting this in there when we count the 37 pupils at 0.46, because we're only assuming $3,000 each.
Mm-hmm.
Which, if we went to a full-time equivalent, that would be $6,000, and our current is $15,000. So the
Yeah, I
reduced
believe they're
the
using the
average.
base ed amount, which is a 9,000 something. So it's really, it is a net savings.
So it's going to bring that down, all things being equal. We'll bring our per pupil spending down. So the only way to raise revenue
Exactly.
is with the base, either the base ed amount or
Statewide tax
the
rate.
statewide tax rate.
Yeah. There's no
The way
other
that
way.
they put that 0.46 in there forces you to raise it through the rate.
Yep, either the base ed amount or
Right.
the statewide tax rate, which are, intricately linked.
Okay.
So next meeting, there are a few things we'll come prepared to share with the board. One is itemized capital needs and prioritized as well. And then we'll give you a snapshot of the staffing and what the numbers look like in a few different scenarios.
And this would be the opportunity if the members of the board had any suggestions, recommendations, or direction on basic programming. Right now is the time to talk about, do we want to, introduce another foreign language, take a foreign language, is there any strategic guidance on major changes, right?
Yeah, if you wanted to add a program or add something or delete something, this would be the time. You've already given us some guidance around the capital needs. But if there's a program you wanted to add or reduce, then now would be the time for we can also do it throughout the process, but we can certainly do it in preparation for the next meeting as well.
Is there any discussion there? I mean, unless we provide any, changes, it's likely going to be the same programming, and then we see the numbers, and it gets to December, January, and then we start trying to figure out. So now would be a better time to think about it, not from a budgeting perspective, but just from an overall school perspective. The other thing perhaps to consider was 6 months ago or whatever it was, we had the list, right, of A, B, C, D, E, F, G, all the way down. Anything that we removed that we'd want to put back in, or anything that we didn't remove that we didn't want to remove. And my thought, of all the dials that we have here, I think the one dial that we need to have a discussion about is the food service. And probably a discussion when Jessica can talk would be more fair. Or tight. But I think we need to look at that because that's a program that we could do differently, right?
Yeah, I did ask David, Horner, our food service director, to, just for my information, to look at what it would, what would be would there be a savings in satelliting UID and Smiling right now? One in Camel's Hump and one's in Booth Browns River, just for food for thought. You know, as we're looking at, like you shared at the finance committee meeting, systems wide, what are some of the levers we may want to pull if we do have a merger?
Yeah, and specifically to that point, like if there are things that we can't do in our budget because we're one small district that we wish we could do if we were a larger district, you know, identifying those things in this process would really help if we merge the board that would eventually propose the budget for next year.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so food service might be one of those things where perhaps somebody would say, well, we like to have control of our food service, you know, as a district, and if we, you know, send it over to this other district, it's, you know, we get whatever they send us. But if we were all one district, one board, we're all eating the same food, so to speak, then maybe that wouldn't be such a hard thing for the school to accept.
You would still have control.
Right, you would still have that control if that was the concern.
Yep.
Right. So I think we should give that some thought. Food service being one example, but there could be other areas if we looked at this budget in that lens of if we were one bigger district, what would we do differently from a staffing and any other
Programmatic. Yep. And the recommendation I'm providing boards is that we budget, you know, like it's a typical year, with a lens to some wider, bigger scope items around it if we do merge, and then there's a liaison that's designated for the boards districts that do merge, that would be working with the new finance committee or the new board around what the FY16 budget looks like. And that's what we discussed at the finance committee meeting. So that, because the time is going to be quite condensed, and they're going to need some support and guidance from folks that are on these boards to be able to prepare a thoughtful budget. And I think people are on board with that. And quite honestly, there's a lot of overlap on this potential possible new board in the boards that are in place right now. I did see the list, and there's, you know, a number of people that are currently on local elementary district boards and MMU that have gotten the petitions ready to be on the ballot. Most of them.
I have some input from Jessica. Food service, I think it would help to put something on the blog and/or all school meeting where we point out that every hot lunch bought is a vote for hot lunches at our school and a vote for that particular menu item. I bet most parents don't really think about the school breaking even on food or realize that their child's lunch choices actually have a direct impact. I also support the idea of selling things with a profit margin, such as the breakfast offered last year or muffins, bread, etc. Friday takeout. Whatever we can handle that might up the profits.
Good point.
Good.
Yep, so just from a number standpoint, so the total budget projected, and I know this is a very rough, is 214.6K, right?
Mm-hmm.
111 of that is pre-K. 11K of that is the food service, and then 32K is the nurse.
Well, the nurse isn't a direct $32,000 increase because you had some local there. So it's about $12,000 difference.
12, okay.
And then 14,180 is your technology add-in.
So this also includes a salary increase of 3%?
A placeholder.
A placeholder, but that can't be in the 212 K increase. I gotta believe that salary increase of 3% is,
Well,
what's the increase from the teacher's salary, I guess is my question.
we're using 3% as a placeholder, but,
But a dollar,
But-
and the dollar amount.
It's like if you take the.
you know, I'm sorry, I
FY15
didn't bring that information with me tonight, and I do have that, so I apologize that I don't have it. But what's interesting with this particular year as well is that fiscal year 15 is the last year of the 3-year buyout that we had in place for teachers. And so that was budgeted in fiscal year 15. That's not going to be in place in fiscal year 16 because fiscal year 15 is the last year of the buyout. So even though there's a 3% salary increase being used as a placeholder, we have a reduction in the teacher salaries, if you will, because you don't have that 3-year buyout on that line. Does that
Severance
make sense?
incentive.
Severance incentive. Thank
Yeah,
you.
and you don't have a liability on the books for it.
Correct.
But it's roughly like a 3% increase to the, to our
To the-
overall labor is like $50,000, 50, 60. It's not,
Yeah.
it's not 100,000, it's not 50,000, somewhere in the middle.
So right now, it looks like salaries are 1.78%
Just on the teachers.
teachers, and then
Mhm.
and 1,000 for paraprofessionals or aides.
Yeah.
So actually, it's adding them all together, it looks like a 1.78% increase.
Should have brought a little bell.
But we did apply a 3% increase to the salaries.
Yes, we did.
And I'm trying to think, did we? Well, you also had some reductions too that are going to be included in there from last year. So that's why it looks less too as well, Jim,
Okay.
because you took some money out last year. You made some reductions. Some. Who did you reduce last year, David?
Ariane Edgerton.
Yeah, so that number's in here, and that's a chunk of
Yeah.
money.
Oh, I see.
That'd be if you were comparing it to 14, though. It's not 15.
But it was.
No.
You had it in, oh, it's not in this year's budget, that's right. It would have, let me work that back in my mind though, because yeah, it would have been, that would have had an influence in last year's.
I also, I want to remind you that when you shift the nurse from,
Oh, that money was in there.
you had, your art teacher, I believe, also was local and now assessed, so that money shifts from the salary line to an assessed line. So there's a couple of variables that play into why this salary line itself doesn't look like a 3% increase when we're looking at those numbers.
Well, we can get you all the detail.
Yeah, I can have all of that,
We'll break it down
cleaner lines.
so
for
it
you.
makes sense.
So Jessica had a question to me. Based on our numbers for next year, do we think that our current staff is an appropriate number? Will we be back to 1K, 3 1-2s, and 3 3-4s? And as John said, we're looking at those numbers and we'll have them ready for the next board meeting, and I'll present a couple of scenarios.
If we do a unified district, would we have assessments?
We would, if we were unified, no.
If we were modified, unified?
There would have to be some assessments,
Only for the
only for the,
non-member.
yep.
But we'd still be able to show a budget for an individual school.
Yes, we do.
somehow.
We do now. I mean,
Okay.
we don't put it in the annual report because it would be very confusing. But when we're building the budget, it's school-based budgets that we build. And then we look at, each school and where they're at, class size, and et cetera.
All right, any further questions or instant messages on the draft one of the budget? Okay. You're welcome to stay.
Thank you, I appreciate the invitation.
Maybe next meeting you can sit on the bench.
Maybe.
All right, thanks a lot.
Thanks, Joanne. Thank you. Good night.
Nate, Julian,
Thanks
thank
for
you.
humoring me with the page numbers. Do we have additional topics for preschool program, or do we hit that one already?
I just wanted to give you a summary, bulleted summary. We've gone over a great deal of it, but I thought this might just help you get a sense of what some of the key elements are that are really that will influence your budget. And some of the specifics around who's eligible and who isn't. I won't read it to you, but I'll highlight a few. The name of the act is Act 270, passed last year. Students that are 3, 4, and really 5 years old, some of them will be eligible. There'll need to be some specific requirements and guidelines in policy around eligibility. Parents can choose, they have the choice of a school-based program or a private, qualified private provider. The parents, one of the things they need to do is inform the school if they are enrolled in a qualified preschool program. Those students, whether they're school-based or not, become part of your average daily membership or your enrollment. The families will be provided $3,000 worth of support, 10 hours per week, 35 weeks per year, again for a qualified program. The school district will need to enter into agreements with providers and set up a tuition payment schedule for each fiscal year. The providers, if they're private, they need to let us know when students unenroll, and the cost will be put into school district budgets, both whether it's school-based or whether it's private providers. There'll be an estimate of the number of preschool students who qualify, and that's how we will plan. This will be reconciled at some point. They haven't given us the date for the actual cost and the actual tax rate implications. And it will become fully implemented July 1, 2015. So for budgeting purposes, whether you're one district or 10, we're going to have to use an estimate for the tax rate that goes out in the annual report because we won't know. And then that'll need to be reconciled at some point, whether it's the next fiscal year or at the end of or at some point at the end of the fiscal year to determine what the actual costs are. Because we won't know in January, how many eligible preschool students will be. They're just based on people moving in and out. Whether somebody thinks they might want to now but decides they won't. So it's completely the parent's choice. It is not a requirement. And I think it will drive some supply and demand. Right now, I do not see any other funding source other than either the property tax or some tax. There's no other funding stream that has been communicated to me.
So for the estimated 37 students, if not all students accept the $3,000, where does that money flow back into?
What I believe will happen is they'll adjust what your budget looks like and your tax rate. That's one, or they'll apply it to the next fiscal year. So it'll have to be averaged into another estimate, the real number. That's the way I think they're going to handle it. We have not
When you
been
say
given that.
they, you're
The
you're
state,
suggesting the state is going to be controlling the flow of money,
they do now.
not the district?
We send, the money, tax money goes to Montpelier, and then they send it back to municipalities, and it's based on
Budget?
your budget and your equalized pupils. And the equalized pupil number will really be much more of a moving target
For preschool.
for preschool than it is for your typical K to 12.
We budget for 37, and we have 40 qualify and take the $3,000.
Mm-hmm.
In my mind, I was just thinking, now we have a deficit, for that line item, and next year we need to budget accordingly.
No,
You're saying
I don't-
we would get
yeah.
true up during the year, and
Yeah.
we wouldn't get hurt.
I believe they'll have to do that because there would be such volatility in deficits for some school districts. They're going to have to true it up. Dave Thomas, I love that word. At some point, much like they would do with students that tuition now to schools, because you have to have your announced tuition rate in, I think it's November, and that is really just an estimate. So if it's within 3% more or less, it has to be reconciled at the end of the fiscal year. So I think that's how they're going to have to handle it.
So what decisions does the board have for pre-K next year?
It's a law. So
Like what choices are before us?
You're
How
the
we present it?
how you present it, whether whether you wanted to budget for a school-based program, which I would not at this point recommend that. But it's really less choice and more preparing than anything
A
else.
school-based program would compete with the private preschools. Parents would then just have a choice. They would have one more choice to send their student to.
Right.
If we felt like there was not enough supply of qualified pre-Ks, we might feel compelled to have our own program.
Yep.
Right?
Yes.
Or for some other reason, like if we thought we could do it better,
Mm-hmm.
and we thought that the parents would choose that route, we thought we could save money,
Mm-hmm.
that would encourage us to do a program.
Yes. The intent of the law really is to really engage and cultivate these private partnerships. Because in the long haul, I think, and this I do believe is true, over the long haul, that will be much more sustainable. Because of some of the requirements around preschool, you have to, in a school, you have to have a licensed educator. At a preschool program, you have to have one licensed educator, not necessarily everybody. And so the requirements are different for preschool. And parents really have the choice. So they could tell you the year before, I'm going to enroll my child in the school-based program, and then they could say, I haven't seen any guidelines with the cutoff. They could say in August, no, I'm going to send my child here.
Oh yeah, if I get into this program, I'm going to go. If not,
Right. So you could end up having class sizes of like 4 kids and 2 adults that you're, at least one that you would be, their contract is binding.
one of the things I'm hearing locally is there's one preschool at Saxon Hill who may or may not have a lease next year.
Mm.
When you think about building capacity, we got buildings,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? But how would, is there a win-win there
Mm-hmm.
from a budgeting perspective, right? We would still have to budget the $3,000. We would still cut the check to that school for $3,000, but then they would pay us for the use of the facility at I guess, at a market rate.
Yeah.
Right, and then
Yeah.
it would be a win-win. We
Yeah.
have a spot.
Mhm.
Do you know of any examples where there's a private pre-K operating inside of a public school?
Sure. Well, I used to partner with the Lund Home, and what we did is part of the day was preschool and part of it was childcare. And we're also looking at another one in Richmond as well. They're nonprofits. They're after school care that are I think are really seeing that there's a potential and there's going to be a need for these preschools and and the school-based programs, the way they're set up now, are they're not super convenient for parents because they're 4 hours a day, and then the students go home, and so
Right.
there's no aftercare. And I think for some of the school-based programs, what they've been able to do is have the preschool at 10 hours a week, and then and continue that with both some preschool and some after-school care, right up for these little kids until they go home, till the parents pick them up. I see that as a really strong model, and it's what we really need to be doing is partnering with some of these nonprofits that have the capacity and not necessarily schools taking on more programs.
I don't know how to initiate that conversation, but I think now's the time for next year, to be somehow talking with that preschool, right? If they're wondering where that preschool is going to operate,
Mm-hmm.
and we're wondering how they're going to pay for the voucher,
Mm-hmm.
then and we have to. And we
Do you have a
potential
contact?
for-
Do you
No,
know?
I don't. I just heard it at Harvest Market
We-
at the parade. So
Because that's the time, that's really, I could see one of our schools maybe really becoming a partnered preschool, that's maybe someday, but that's where it was, that's what their niche was.
Jessica says she's an alumni family and she can get in touch with someone for a contact.
That'd be great. Could you send it to us?
are you the designated pre-K
Bev is.
coordinator?
Bev White is. I think it might be nice. Yeah, Bev is. I think we should do it like that. I was going to suggest David, but I think it might be.
Mhm.
We don't want to get the lines too entangled because what happens is we miss information, and I don't want to.
Right.
Yeah, it's broader
I
than
can
this
check in
district,
with that.
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's definitely broader than under UID.
Oh yeah.
It's just-
Jericho. All these school districts are going to need to partner, and we do have space. We've got space in, really. We have capacity in all of our buildings right now. So we will, if we, Jessica, you'll send a contact?
I think we want to be prepared with what space we'd be willing to offer them before we make contact. And I think that's something that John and Bev and I could talk about.
Yeah, we'd just be making an inquiry, not any decisions, just to see if it's even a viable option, and then bring that back and then have a discussion with the board. I think it's the way to go, me personally, because you'd be providing students with potentially a very enriching, safe, healthy environment for them to be at for a good chunk of time that can only pay dividends.
And comment I would say, in Westford having a preschool that then fed the school, you're building that family connection just that much earlier, right? Which is a benefit.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have parents that are going to be bringing their kids here for kindergarten, first grade, that can also bring their kids here for preschool.
Yep. Yeah, it could be a win-win-win, which rarely happens. Excellent.
Nothing there?
We'll figure it out.
Lauren, any questions, comments?
No, we've already.
You beat this one up?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, sir. Moving on. Let's go to bed at 8 o'clock. Campbell House. Okay.
Right to be there.
Oh, I try to get there after. Committee reports.
Did we have a board merger statement, or are we holding
Oh.
that off to the end?
I'm sorry. I checked it off. I haven't. I did it. Checked off in my head. So, as Mr. Marks sometimes says, exercise his prerogative.
He does that. He's very diplomatic.
I don't know if that's appropriate, but as chair, I'll move the adoption of the following resolution. Look that one up. That the Underhill ID School Board supports the approval of the unification of the districts and the Articles of Agreement.
I love the clarity and the simplicity of it.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I like that.
Yeah, I do too. It's very good.
I just copied it from the MMU.
But still, no wonder I liked it.
Something called it a resolution. It's not really a decision, right? It's just a resolution.
Resolution.
All right, there's a second. No further discussion. So all those in favor of accepting the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Thumbs up. All those opposed, thumbs down or nay. All right, motion is carried. Double check that one. So will you make sure, John, that that gets into the presentation tomorrow? We don't.
The resolution?
Definitely.
Yes, I will. I'll make sure UID gets in there.
Will you stand up?
Yep.
And say.
Yep. I'll bring the resolution.
Probably won't correct the.
Can I? Do you mind if I have it?
No, hold on one second.
No, I will definitely do that. Yep.
Assuming you'll be there.
Michael will be very pleased. So.
If I remember, I'll send him a note. Maybe you can.
Okay.
The presentation.
Yep.
But if not,
I will put it in. Yep.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
okay. Good. Now we're on to number 7, committee reports. Jim, any committee reports?
None. None for me.
Lauren, any
No.
committee? No committee, you're just the board guy.
I'm just a poor guy.
All right. Attached to the this meeting were the executive committee meeting minutes as well as the voluntary merger committee minutes. Just call your attention to a couple of key things on the executive committee side. John reviewed the professional development work that's been going on throughout the supervisory union, as well as updated on the Common Core. I think the minutes reflect what is going on there, but it's a nice report. Also, John went over 2 or 3 goals that he had. I think we narrowed it down to 2. And every year, superintendent has these goals, that he works on. The first one is to focus on the unification vote and transition, assuming it's approved. And the second one is to support negotiations, 2 big activities that we have going on this year. And on the VSBA, there's a, you've probably all seen the emails 20 times, but tomorrow night is the meeting in Milton for the, and Secretary Holcomb is going to be present, I believe. So we've got a few people. Jim, you're signed up for that. I'm signed up for that. I'm thinking I'm going to go, but if you still want to attend, I'm sure it's open. There's 2 other meetings and an open house as well tomorrow. So if you're not doing and soccer practice.
We have our first merger.
So if you're not doing something tomorrow night, you're probably missing out on plenty of things. The merger.
I have no life, so.
The merger committee met for probably the last time, and we talked about 2 things: kind of the role of the merger committee during the information session. So we got aligned on what committee members can do in terms of speaking about it and speaking on their own versus speaking on behalf of the committee. And then we also went through the draft presentation that will be given tomorrow night and provided feedback to Michael Marks. And that's all probably be posted tomorrow, I'd imagine, or already is.
Mhm.
And I say it's the last meeting because every other night between now and November 4th, the committee or portions of the committee will be attending these various meetings, 13, 14 different meetings
14.
around where we have one here closer to the end of the month within the 10 days of the vote, because you have to be in every district within that 10 days. So
we'll have a lot of forums.
we have the flyer going out.
Flyers going out, should be in people's homes Friday or Saturday.
And we have time. Just a couple people when I went around to get signatures for being on the ballot, they asked me about the merger. And in UID, a couple people, were asking about, what does that mean for the school? Does that mean, some people were like, does that mean we can finally close the school? And other people were saying, this isn't going to close the school, is it? And so the response I give is pretty much the same response, regardless of how they ask it. But I talk about the current struggles with this school, and the reality was last year we came relatively close to thinking about tuitioning our students out. We chose not to, but the financial pressures with a small school of students less than 100 make that per pupil spending really hard to keep the school going. And with a unification, we get out from underneath that small school category, and it could very well make it easier to maintain a school like this with a bigger volume of students. We can make decisions about which students maybe go to which school. We can try to better move teachers around and assets, and we wouldn't be operating this small building. But on the other hand, given that we'd be one bigger district, if the district wanted to repurpose the school, they would more easily be able to do that. Like today, it's really hard for us to repurpose the school. We would have to make the decision to just tuition our kids out and basically give up on them and let other districts provide their education. And so it's kind of a hard one to swallow there to do that. So we're somewhat compelled to keep the school going, and if we thought there was a better use of our resources as part of a unification, a larger union, then we could make that decision. But it's really up to what the new board decides. So
More levers.
there's more levers, and I think when I might spend a little bit more time explaining that than I just did, but I think people get it. That most of them say, I think most people say I shouldn't be making this vote about closing or keeping the school open. It's like that can happen regardless of this vote. And we should be thinking about this vote in terms of having more choices to do. And I'd be interested to hear what other people have talked about, but I haven't had one conversation about local control. Nobody's really concerned about that. One person was interested in dollars and cents. What does it mean financially? And your tax rate's not going to go down next year, regardless, right? I mean, this isn't. It might not go up as much, but the likelihood is that we're still going to have pressures on the budget. This isn't going to eliminate the spending increases that we're seeing, but it's more levers and we'll be more control of the budget. But there will be a little bit of tax incentive.
Yeah, and you may have some situations where in some towns the rate could go down comparatively.
Yeah, but it's comparatively, and at most, if the budget were the exact same budget, at most it could go down as 5%.
Right, can't go more than that.
And we're looking at a 12% increase in our budget. So,
But remember, there's not a one-to-one link to the budget
Right.
and the.
but if ours is 12 and MMU's is 8, then that 5% isn't going to.
It will be highly unlikely, but it will mitigate the impact.
There's other districts, I think, that we're in a position where we have that high per pupil spending and that high tax rate. It doesn't exist in all the districts, so I think we'll be one of the most benefited districts from a tax perspective. But I don't think people are going to be saving. I just don't see it in the cards where they're going to see their tax bill go down hundreds of dollars next year. I think that would be a lot of things that have to fall into place for that to happen.
I agree.
So anyway, any other, have any conversations with anyone?
I'm kind of surprised I haven't been approached yet, but no.
I had similar comments like that. People are afraid about school closing, but once they realize the schools actually cannot be closed, and within the first 3 years, and the district needs to be dissolved, and all sorts of other things, and voters need to approve, and everybody was, they just thought this makes sense. So, but no control, local control, never heard.
Okay. So committee reports done. Go back to that one. Consent agenda. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes from previous meeting as well as the warrants.
For $212,777.68.
So moved. There's second.
Second.
All those in favor signify by raising your thumb. Unanimously approved. I kind of doubt that for a while. 3 votes, but I got there. Okay, next meeting date and agenda. We have to have this next meeting because it's a community forum meeting, right?
Mhm.
So we're looking at, trying to find it here. Did I make the list?
28.
10/28. At 6 p.m. That's a different time than today's meeting. So at 6 p.m. Jim.
So are we gonna have a board meeting after the forum?
You have to be either after or before.
Okay,
After.
okay.
I mean, I don't anticipate I would recommend keeping the agenda pretty streamlined, but
I would think we'd want to have it before, because then we can control how long this takes. We're not going to be able to control how long this meeting on the 28th, the forum lasts. I mean, that could go till 10 o'clock, and then if we're stuck trying to have the board meeting after that, we'll be here for late. So,
So we do the board meeting first, let everybody listen to us, then we listen to them.
I think we would have the board meeting before 6 p.m.
Yeah, that's
That's
what
what
I'm,
you're
yes,
suggesting.
that's what I'm
And
suggesting.
historically, we haven't been able to get everybody there before 6 p.m.
I know it's a challenge, but boy, if we leave it till after this forum is over, we could be here till.
I can do it.
So the agenda, let's just make sure we understand what's on the agenda so we know how much time we need to commit to it. Budget, right? Do you think we'll have another round of preschool, or at this point is it?
yeah, I think we'll provide you any new information, but we'll integrate it right into the budget discussion because that's where it belongs.
So we have comment, budget, committee reports, consent agenda. Any other? We're going to do the capital plan review as part of the budget.
Yep.
So it'll be a budget-focused meeting. And we historically have spent a good chunk of time reviewing those things. And I think 30 minutes would be tight. I think we should allocate at least an hour for the meeting, which means we want to start it at 5. Can you guys support 5?
Yes.
I can do 5.
I can do 5.
28, yeah.
Someone would say no, so I'd have to check my calendar.
Just says this could be our last board meeting officially ever, and add party to the agenda.
And we'll still have to meet and help the new board.
We'll have cupcakes. made by our kitchen. A question about the location of the forum. So I was working with Andrea on different spaces, and there is a group that we displace in the gym if we have this, and we would have displaced them 2 weeks in a row. So the question is, do we think we can have the forum here?
What we don't see on this calendar is there's another meeting on the exact same day, right, at Underhill Center. So
You might be presenting this one.
can I present at Underhill Center?
Sure, you actually probably could.
Which is just the design of it is just a little hokey, but that's what we had to do to get it in, have one meeting in each district within 10 days, right?
Yeah.
So
It has to be like that.
I think this room would be fine,
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
good.
probably more than enough room.
And I think there's a meeting at the library the day before or the week before.
Yep. Yeah, and I'd probably, if we're talking to people, encourage people to attend the broader meetings.
Yeah.
You know,
Makes sense.
this is like the statutory requirement, and it's going to be not well attended because there's another meeting, and
It's not gonna
I
be
would-
very
I would
exciting,
send-
hopefully.
yeah, I would send everybody to that. Which date is it in here?
The BRMS
Mhm.
on the 16th.
Mhm.
Yeah, the 16th, or the one at the high school on the 22nd.
Yeah.
And for board members, that would be a good one. Those would probably be good ones to attend. But we'll be here.
So we're gonna do 5 o'clock?
5 o'clock, yep. 5 o'clock it is. So we would just want to make sure, John, that we note the merger information meeting is still at 6.
Yep, I have that
Or
written
it'll be
down.
at 5.
6 p.m. forum, community forum.
Yeah.
And regular board meeting, 5 p.m. And
Two-
then
two separate events.
we'll delineate them on the agenda.
And it will, I think you were joking, but would be our last meeting before we know our future. We still have the responsibility to develop a budget to propose to that new board sometime in December. They won't form until December. And I think they'll be expecting us to continue to participate in that budget
Yeah.
development process, and we still have to run the district. One thing that occurred to me, I think I was talking to you, was that we're still gonna have an annual meeting in March as a district. Pretty sure we still have to elect a treasurer or appoint a treasurer. And we still have, so there'll still be board of directors for the district, but we won't be responsible for providing any education to the students. We'll just be a
Prudential.
municipality,
Yep.
the prudential board. So we will have to elect officers that will probably meet once a year.
Yep.
For the purposes of keeping the municipality
Running.
running.
Yep. You know, the tax collecting and the treasurer.
Much like the CESU board meets once a year,
Right.
you know, and they have dinner, and
Right.
they delegate all the responsibilities to other committees and
To
other
the-
boards.
To the CSU
Executive
executive committee.
Right, but the
It'll
board
look-
itself meets
Once a year.
and it's 3 members.
Three
from each of
delegates,
them. So,
Until such time as the voters decide to dissolve the UID district, right?
and that could be an agenda item at town meeting for our district. We could put that on the ballot. Do we want to dissolve? And we could also put on the ballot, do we want to give permission to the new district to close the school? Or not? It's a strategic question, right?
Right.
Because once you dissolve, you no longer have the right of refusal.
Yeah, no,
Or,
you would
you know,
have-
and then it would likely, if you dissolve, my guess is the property which is in Jericho would then be part of the Jericho School District. And the Jericho School District could make that decision. Because you get that 4-year waiting period. Right, and if you felt it was necessary to shortchange that 4 years, the owning district has to say it's okay.
Okay.
And the new board won't be taking over full operations until July 1, 2015. So you're still going to have to approve the warrants, and there will be some other responsibilities as well. But this new board, as Kevin said, they cannot meet until December. So you folks will need to continue to prepare the budget and put it together.
After July 1st, the warrants will be,
Yeah, that'll be completely transitioned to this new board.
the district
Potentially.
just collects the taxes and
Yep.
sends it off to the
Sends it.
state.
Sends it to the state. That's it.
That's the way. Okay. All right, any other business? All right, entertain a motion to adjourn.
She's speechless.
I move to adjourn.
Second, all those in favor signify by giving me the thumbs up. Or the head nod, if you want to change it. All right, meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody.